Look in the mirror and tell me what you see. Look at how you look. Look at how you feel. Look at how you think. Now stop for a moment. What are you starting to say about you? What are you saying that you're now starting to believe? What judgments and who might be saying them in the first place? But more importantly, are they actually yours? Join us humans as we break down the illusion of me, diving into a reality that very few dare to confront, the reality into oneself. In this video, we will tear down the walls of the ego and expose the master illusionist behind the so-called self. Could it be that everything you think you are, everything you believe to be, is actually fake? Be sure to stay till the end as we uncover how your very own personality, your ego, might be the very prison keeping you from connecting with your true self. Get ready, humans. Welcome to Astral Breeds, True Oneness. Be sure to leave us a like and subscribe to the Astral Breeds tribe. Now, fellow humans, let us begin. Let's start with a question. Who are you really? Not your name, not your job, not even your thoughts or feelings. Who are you at your core? It's a question that has perplexed humanity for millennia, a question that delves into the very essence of our existence. At the heart of this exploration lies a powerful, elusive force, the ego. In the simplest terms, it's the sense of self, the I, that navigates this world. It's the voice in your head that says, I am special, I deserve this, I am different. This sense of individuality drives our behaviors and decisions, influencing how we engage with the world and others. It's not just the persona you present to the world, but also the hidden force shaping that persona. Your ego is more than just a concept. It has become a biochemical force within you. It's the primal part of your brain that developed millions of years ago to keep you safe, alert, and alive. Back then, the ego was a survival tool. The ego developed to create fear and trigger survival instincts, flooding bodies with adrenaline and cortisol, preparing them to either fight or run. But in today's world, those dangers are gone. We're no longer being hunted by saber-toothed tigers or fighting off starvation in a wild, unforgiving landscape. Yet, the ego hasn't caught up. It's still wired the same way, always on high alert, searching for threats that aren't there. Now, instead of protecting you from wild animals, it traps you in a new kind of fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection. This is not metaphorically, but literally. Psychologically speaking, the ego has the ability to distort your perception of reality, amplifying your fears and convince you that your self-worth is dependent on external validation. This distortion doesn't just change how you see the world. It creates a lens through which every experience is filtered, often making neutral events seem threatening. The ego hijacks your nervous system, triggering real physiological responses. The prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for rational thinking and decision-making, becomes impaired as blood flow is redirected to the survival centers of the brain. This impairs your ability to think clearly, problem solve, or regulate your emotions effectively, leaving you trapped in a heightened state of anxiety and reactivity. In this way, the ego creates a dependence on external sources to maintain a fragile sense of self-worth, trapping you in a loop of insecurity. The perceived threats that trigger these physiological responses often stem from deeply ingrained beliefs and narratives, stories you've internalized about your identity, worth, and how others see you. Neuroscientific research indicates that these responses are rooted in neural pathways shaped by past experiences, trauma, and societal conditioning, reinforcing automatic responses, limiting our capacity for change. Dr. Bruce Lipton, a renowned cell biologist and author of The Biology of Belief, emphasizes how our subconscious mind, shaped by early life experiences, creates automatic behavioral patterns that govern much of our actions. According to Lipton, the subconscious mind is 1,000,000 times more powerful than the conscious mind and runs our lives about 95% of the time. The brain forms these pathways through the process of neuroplasticity, where repeated thoughts and emotions reinforce certain circuits, making them more likely to fire in the future. Research in neuroscience show that repeated thought patterns and emotional reactions physically change the structure of the brain. Essentially, the more one dwells on narratives of inadequacy or fear, the more robust these neural connections become, reinforcing a feedback loop that deepens the ego's influence over perception and behavior. What began as a fleeting worry turns into a deeply ingrained belief system, allowing the ego to continuously shape your worldview and limit your potential. But let's understand how it is that the ego truly learned and evolved to operate, constantly creating our sense of personality. As infants, the words and concepts we absorbed began to structure our internal world, laying the foundation for our ego to develop and shape our personality. When you were born, you didn't have a concept of I. You were just an extension of the universe, one with everything around you. But then, the words started forming. I, me, mine. Slowly but surely, these words did something to you. They drew a line between you and everything else. The ego emerged, not as an innate identity, but as a construct, a linguistic construct. Studies in developmental psychology reveal that as early as 2 years old, children start using I to differentiate themselves from others, marking the birth of self-awareness. This crucial moment, often celebrated as a developmental milestone, is actually the ego's first foothold. The seemingly innocent word, I, becomes the foundation for the elaborate illusion of separateness you now call you. Cognitive psychologists have shown that self-referential language, like I and me, plays a crucial role in creating what's called self-schema, the mental structure that organizes your beliefs, experiences, and perceptions around the idea of a distinct self. But what if this self actually wasn't you at all? You see, here is the issue. Our main mistake is creating a system of language, beliefs, and measurements that's too simple to really capture how complex the world is. We often confuse this system of symbols and ideas with reality itself, falling into the trap of thinking that these simplified models represent the world as it truly is. This means we reduce the boundless complexity of existence into narrow concepts and categories, losing sight of the deeper, ever-shifting essence of life. This limitation distorts our understanding of not only the world, but also ourselves. Neuroscientists like Anil Seth argue that the self is more like a controlled hallucination, a necessary illusion that allows us to function, but doesn't fully capture the entirety of our being. Psychologically, the ego is the part of the mind responsible for organizing our thoughts, decision-making, and navigating the outside world, helping us maintain a coherent sense of self, grounding us in reality, and enabling us to function in society. However, modern psychology recognizes that the ego is not the whole picture. Rather, it represents just one aspect of the mind. Researchers have found that many of our decisions are made subconsciously, influenced by deep-seated patterns of behavior, emotional conditioning, and neural wiring. This means our thought processes are shaped by unconscious systems that operate beyond our awareness. These automatic systems influence everything from our daily habits to our emotional responses, often leading us to believe we're making conscious choices when, in reality, much of our behavior is pre-programmed. Due to this, studies in cognitive science suggest that the ego's sense of control is an illusion, and therefore, in the same way, our personality. In spiritual and philosophical traditions, the ego is often seen as the false self, the ego-driven sense of individuality that leads us to believe that we are isolated beings. This perception of separateness fuels the illusion that we are defined solely by our personal experiences, achievements, and external circumstances. The ego, in this sense, is what many spiritual practices seek to transcend in order to reach a higher state of consciousness, one in which unity, interconnectedness, and the dissolution of personal boundaries are fully realized. Why? Because spiritual teachings show how we have to understand the ego is not something we are inherently born with. While it's true that the ego gives us our sense of self, we often forget it's actually our false sense of self, which allows you to have a person in this world. So here's where things start to get deep. What if the way you see yourself, the version you identify with every day, isn't actually you? The truth is, you, as an organism, are something much more powerful and dynamic than this we call an ego. It's vital to understand the difference between the ego and the organism. While the ego strives to preserve the illusion of control and individuality, the organism simply is in an integral part of the universe's flow. So here's where the illusion truly sets in. The problem is that we treat it as real in the sense of it being a physical organ. We behave like the ego is a concrete, undeniable part of our anatomy, something solid and essential like our heart or brain. But the thing is, it's not. The ego is not the same thing as a particular living organism. The ego isn't some fundamental biological necessity either. It's a narrative, not a physical structure. What I mean by this is, the ego can be useful, sure, but but it's not essential to our being, like the blood in our veins or the breath in our lungs, and so, by definition, can't uphold its existence in the way we believe it to be. While the organism is a living, breathing, dynamic expression of the universe, the ego is in fact composed only of one thing, and one thing only, on our image of ourselves. Yes, that's it. The ego thrives on this self-created image that we constantly feed ourselves every single day. This is what we call the person. But the thing is, that image isn't real. Something that's real in this sense must exist as part of a seamless relationship with its environment, responding to natural rhythms and cycles. Ego is something else entirely. It exists purely, as philosopher Alan Watts once said, as a social convention, a useful tool for discussion and convenience. In simple terms, this means the ego is just the mask we wear, the mental persona we craft to interact with the world, to fit into society's expectations. It helps us play roles: student, worker, parent, friend. But it's just that, a role, a temporary label we attach to for convenience, and yet we mistake this constructed identity for who we truly are. So to go on believing that image as ourselves is extremely inaccurate and incomplete, in that this image you hold of yourself lacks any real information into the actual functioning of your nervous system, your circulation, your metabolism, nor any mental and physical unconscious processes. This includes all the complex workings of your brain and your inseparable nature and connection to the universe. As a result, this concept of you is by definition illusory, not real. The truth is, this self-image is merely an illusionary character, shaped primarily by your interactions with others. People, either directly or indirectly, tell you who you are, and you subconsciously conform to those perceptions. It's a continuous loop, a back-and-forth exchange where others project an image of you and themselves, which then is internalized by you, and together construct this idea of me. And as mentioned, this process started in the earliest years of life and has deeply influenced the way you perceive yourself today. It's also important to remember that the ego operates so seamlessly within your neural pathways that it could explain how it has the power of convincing you it is you, and so that's why it acts without you even knowing. It's the reason you keep making the same mistakes, falling into the same traps, and repeating the same destructive patterns. Psychologically, the self-image becomes so rigidly ingrained that it blocks personal growth, trapping you in habitual ways of thinking and acting. And unless you become aware of this process and begin to uncover it, the ego will continue to dominate, leading to cycles of self-sabotage. So here starts a paradox. If someone tells you to change certain behaviors or do something about it, the reality is that the you they are referring to, the you that you believe yourself to be, can't actually do anything. Why? Because this version of you, the concept of who you think you are, is just that, a concept. It doesn't exist. Yet it is often believed that this concept of ourselves, our personality, or ego, has the ability to take action, as if it truly exists. And here lies the very problem of it all. The illusion of control leads to a deep sense of separation. We think we are individual entities, separate from the flow of life, isolated in our minds, disconnected from the world around us. This sense of alienation is intensified when we fail to live up to the ego's expectations. We feel trapped in the illusion of self, struggling to control outcomes and behaviors, not realizing that the very tool we are using to fix, the ego, is the source of our suffering. And that's the key point of this video. You cannot transcend the self by relying on the very thing you're trying to overcome. When you attempt to force yourself into becoming more sane, loving, or selfless, you're still operating from the ego's domain. The paradox is this: the very act of trying to change yourself using the person you think you are only strengthens the ego's control, because you can't evolve the self from within its framework. So, you can't do anything. You can't transform yourself. You can't force yourself to change. What now? Many spiritual traditions teach that enlightenment or awakening comes from the dissolution of the ego and the realization of our connection to all things. This ego dissolution is often described as the tearing down of the artificial boundaries between the self and the universe, revealing the truth that consciousness is not confined to the brain, but a universal field we all share. Enlightenment is, therefore, not merely a spiritual idea we can force ourselves into achieving, but the alignment with the underlying quantum fabric of reality itself. All we have to do to achieve it is to let go. And that's the beauty of it all. If you are not that which you think you are, then listen to this. When you simply stop trying, when you simply start to wait, when you simply start to be, you start to notice that things are just happening. You're breathing, the wind is blowing, trees are swaying, blood is circulating, nerves are tingling. It's all happening on its own. And that's it. If you wonder who you really are, that's it, human. That's the real you. The you that breathes without effort, that exists without forcing anything. Your breath, your brain, everything continues without your conscious input. That unfolding is by definition our true self, something not confined within our skin, but everything around us that we're connected to. And so, in the same way, when you look out into nature, you are in fact seeing a reflection of yourself, reconnecting with the essence of the being you truly are. That being includes everything around us, in such that the me is no longer something separate. Now I ask you humans, are you truly ready to break free from this illusion we call personality? And so, in the same way, I need you to ask yourself, what if the only thing standing between you and your infinite potential is your belief in this illusion? Are you brave enough to let it all go and step into the boundless, powerful being that you truly are? Be sure to drop your thoughts in the comments below. We can't wait to know what you think. Thank you, humans. If you enjoyed this video's exploration into the secrets of the ego and its hidden control upon us, be sure to leave a like below and share it with you fellow Earthling. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss out on any future revelations of existence. What other topics would you like us to explore? Be sure to let us know. Until next time, fellow humans, and learn to let go.